Now we're ready to talk about the issues with this skill roll after cleaning everything and putting it back together. Now I have the very front glass off, so this is just the plexiglass, and I went through and started testing my switches. Now before we started a game, in our previous videos, you might have noticed that when the score unit got past around 250 or 300 points, none of the scoring lights would light. I think that was due to the fact that when this machine was still being operated, it had a longer than normal reset, and people would start shooting nickels before the game actually reset, which meant that the score never was kept track of, and that score unit probably didn't move very far. And then couple that with the fact that some of these switches were so dirty they wouldn't work. I think anytime people would play this, they would have a very low score that probably never got out of the 200 range. And because of that, I think just oxidation and moisture took over, and kind of the last half of that score unit was just really dirty and needed to be cleaned. But now when we go through, all of the lights work all the way up to 460. But again, just to test things out, I went through and started a game, and then just went through and did all the switches. I went through and did all the 10s first to make sure those were good, then the 20s, the 30s, and the 50s. Kind of listen for the dings, also keep mental track of what the score should be. And all of these switches were working except for the third row 20 shot. That switch needed a little more aggressive cleaning, and I hit it with the magic brush and it was fine. But everything else was scoring. Now when I got to the 6th row, you should get 40 points for this shot. And you should get 60 points if you hit that. And we go to the 7th row, you should get 70. And then you should get 80 points. And then you should get your star to light at the very end. Now the issue I had with this one, and I haven't seen this on a skill roll yet, but when I got down to the 6th, 7th, and 8th row, there was a scoring issue. On the 6th row, if I shot the 40-point shot, I only got 30 points. If I shot the 60, it only gave me 50. So you were always 10 points shy, no matter which one you hit. On the 7th row, you should get 70 points, but when I hit this, I got 50 points, so it was 20 points shy. But the 8th row here was spot on at 80. So that means that we have an issue to figure out from the schematics. So if we go over to the schematics, this is the row counter unit. And across the top, this shows each row as it gets activated, 1 through 8. And then the series of switches that are on those rows. Again, I'm having problems with 6, 7, and 8. So if we come down here, we can get an idea of how this works. Because we know on our score motor from the previous videos that we only have a 10-point cam, a 20-point, a 30-point, and a 50-point cam. But out of that, on the 6th row, we need a 40 and a 60-point shot. And on the 7th row, we need a 70-point shot. And on the 8th row, we need an 80-point shot. So that's handled by our row counter. And if we come down to row 6, we see 2 switches here. This one has to be the 40-point shot. And if we follow this back, this goes to the 30-point relay. Now, this 30-point relay will only score 30 points, so we got to figure out how that gets 10 more points for a total of 40. Also on that 6th row, this is for the 60-point shot. But again, this will activate the 50 relay. If we follow that back and down, we get the 50-point relay. But again, we got to figure out what gives us that extra 10 points. Then on the 7th row, again, we just have one switch that's activated by the 50-point relay. Same line going back. But we need 20 more points out of that. Then on the 8th row, there are 2 80 shots. Again, that's controlled by the 50-point relay. And then we got to figure out how that gives us 30 more points for a total of 80. So now if we step back and look at this other shaded box for the row counter unit. This handles the extra points on the 6th, 7th, and 8th row. So if we kind of zoom out, remember that on our 6th row shot over there, we were 10 points shy. But if we follow this back, this goes to a 1-pulse cam, or the 10-point cam. So from this connection, we get that extra 10 points to the 30 that gives us a 40-point shot, and we get the extra 10 points from a 50-point shot to give us 60 points. And then the 7, if the row counter was at the next step, we go up and we see that this is on the 2-pulse cam. So again, our 50 relay plus 2 pulses gives us 70. And then if it's in the final position, we can go up and we can see that this connects to the 3-pulse cam. So again, a 50-point shot plus 30 gives us 80. And on this machine, remember that 8 was working great, but 6 and 7 had a problem. So now let's go to our row counter unit. And this is the one on the top. Again, we'll do a full reset. If we do the first pull in, this would be row 1. Now if we look at the wires that are around here, we have one back here all by itself, one by itself here, then there's one kind of by itself, and then there are 8 that are in a row, and then there's 3 down here as well. So kind of just going back to the diagram and not necessarily looking at wire colors or anything, but I would bet that these 8 in a row are the rows that are active at a time. And if we can peek back here, this one single wire, if we can peek on the back of the unit, we should be able to see that this is connected to all of the next rivets in this series. So kind of between these 2 wiper arms, as they rotate counterclockwise, you're changing the active row, and then this wire is connected to a bunch of these on the back side. And remember that we're after the 6th, 7th, and 8th row. Well, there's 3 wires in a row down here. If we're on row 1 now, we got row 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this gets lined up with row 6. Now this wiper arm's connected to this one. And we can see that there's no wire connected here. And if we go one more step, this would be for the 70, and then this would be for the 80. And remember that the 6th and 7th row weren't working. But if we go to the 8th position, if I can find my plunger, 8th position, so 7 and 8. Between these, this one's now active with that one. And when I took this disc off to inspect the back, there is a jumper wire that goes from here to this one for the 7th row and this one for the 6th row. And when it was in this position, it scored good. But on the back side, there was a jumper that went from these 3, and there was a break between the 8th and the 7th position over here. So where this wire comes in completes that additional point circuit, and the jumper that tied these 3 points together was broken between the 8th and the 7th row, which caused the no extra points on the 6th row, no extra points on the 7th row. So I took that off, I resoldered that jumper back in, and now it's working properly. So if we go back to our 6th row, I swear I can do that better when the camera's not on. So 6th row, so now this wire on the back side is connected to here, and then the next pole up is the 7th row. Again, these are connected, and then the last pole is the 8. And then the other wire that we have on here, this must control our light for our star, saying that we got to the bottom. You probably also heard a click. That would have been the 8th row meter incrementing off of the end of stroke switch that's down here. So all of the problem here was just one broken wire on the back side of our row count unit, which was robbing the player of the extra points on the 6th and 7th row. But it was good on the 8th row since that's where the wire, the actual wire from the harness, came into the unit. And other than that, we have a well-working skill roll. Thanks for watching.